Welcome to DC Unseen, live from the Media Hub on riotradio.ca. Hi, I'm your host, Katie Gerard, and this show will all be about stories from staff and students around campus. Today we'll be discussing my story. And actually, this water bottle here represents the color scheme of the title card, which is kind of funny. So, first off, don't judge a book by its cover. Everyone has a story that is worth sharing, and in today's episode of DC Unseen, which will be the first of the series, I will be telling you about my story. I am a first-year student in the broadcasting program, and I enjoy telling and listening to stories. I love acting, painting, playing guitar, hanging out with friends, and skiing, just down here at Kirby, or Brimacombe. And I was pretty involved in high school. I was a part of Plays Best Buddies, which is actually a program who is funded by John F. Kennedy's nephew, Anthony Shriver. And he made the club because he noticed that his aunt, who had an intellectual disability, didn't have many friends, so he created this program that would involve kids in the regular stream with kids in the developmental stream to collide and be able to make friends. So that's pretty cool. And yeah, I wasn't 100% sure on what I wanted to go into if I wanted to go to college or university. So I took both university and college programs or pathways. But yeah, I was just a typical high school student with not too many cares in the world. Welcome back to DC Unseen. I'm your host, Katie Gerard. So yeah, my typical teenage life started to show cracks in grade 9. It was coming to my first semester exams, which are pretty scary. And when after a shower, I go into my sister's room asking to use her hairbrush, and she looks at me and she's like, Dad, Katie's having a stroke. Because the left side of my face had fallen, and it looked like I was having a stroke, because that's a symbol of when you're having a stroke, is your face is fallen. So that was kind of scary for me just to be observing that. And so my dad comes in the room and he rushes me to, he rushed me to the Lake Ridge Hospital in Bowmanville. And at that time, I felt like I was being watching myself from a distance, like not actually being in my body. It was kind of scary. And it almost felt like I was in a scene of Grey's Anatomy, if I could put it in that way. So I went to the Bowmanville Hospital. They quickly discovered that was actually, my family thought was a stroke, was actually caused by something called Bell's palsy, which is a facial paralysis in the left side of your face caused by, this is a shout out to all my biology students out there at DC. It's basically like the 7th nerve in your head, in your brain, that gets pinched by some form of mass or something. I'm not too familiar with that. But it basically makes your face fall because the nerves get pushed with the side of the mass, or whatever biology terms. But yeah, so that was what it was caused by, what they thought at the time. But yeah, a few people that you might actually know who've actually gotten this disease are Angelina Jolie and the former Canadian Prime Minister Jean Cartier actually had it when he was a kid. So that's what I had. That's why I had a droop, or like the facial paralysis droop on the left side of my face. And a couple weeks later, I had an MRI at the Lake Ridge Health in Oshawa just to make sure everything was okay. Because it was kind of odd for a young teenager to experience this in their lives. So yeah, I used to walk home from improv club at my high school, but my dad called me, or after I had the MRI, my dad called me after and said, I'm going to pick you up at the school, which I thought was very weird, because usually what he does is he says, take the bus and walk 20 minutes from home. But he said, I'll pick you up. So I was like, That's weird. Something's a little off. So yeah, he came and he picked me up, and that's when he told me that the doctors had called him from the MRI that I had in the morning, saying that I have what is called an AVM, which is an arterial venous malformation. Yeah, so my heart dropped when he told me that he was gonna come pick me up in the car, because usually I walked home. So I had that feeling in my stomach that something was unusual. So that was kind of scary. Welcome back to DC Unseen. I'm your host, Katie Gerard. So that feeling that I had in my stomach, that something was wrong in the MRI scan, was right. The neurologist called my parents and to tell them that I was diagnosed with an arteriovenous malformation, which is basically caused by a large tangle of blood vessels. Once again, shout out to all my biology students here at DC. Yeah, so and it's basically an artery to my brain that was attached directly to a vein rather than going through a capillary bed. So the capillary bed diffuses the blood so it allows it to seep in, like, properly. But without the capillary bed, it's just constant blood flow, which can cause a tangle of blood vessels, which is the AVM. So that wasn't good. So that resulted in the tingling in the left side of my hand and face, which was the facial droop or the facial paralysis that I had, which my family thought was a stroke. And this means that the AVM was on the right side of my brain, because the right side actually controls the left side of your brain, of your body, and the left side of your brain controls the right side of your body. Very weird, but. So yeah, I was referred to the neurosurgery department at the iconic Sick Kids Hospital in Toronto. Welcome back to DC Unseen. I'm your host, Katie Gerard. So the major risk of an AVM is an aneurysm forming on the tangle of blood vessels and a brain bleed, which could have life-altering consequences or even be fatal. So it was a lot to handle for a 14-year-old. And statistically, around AVMs is that you have 5% of a bleed every year. It increases. So at that time I was 14, so you do the math. But yeah, so I had the AVM since I was born, but didn't know about it until the MRI at the hospital after my exams or before my exams. So over the next few months, I had appointments with the neurosurgeons at Sick Kids. And I honestly wasn't too worried about it because I didn't feel sick, like the quote-unquote sick, because I wasn't in a sick point at that time. I just had this thing that I didn't know about. So that wasn't too hard to handle. And also, Sick Kids is such a world-renowned hospital, right? They have like all these different like paintings on the walls and toys everywhere, and it's very much like a kid-friendly environment. So it almost felt like I was not in a hospital, which is their goal essentially in what they do. But yeah, so yeah, like there's a big fountain in the middle of as soon as you walk through the doors of Sick Kids, there's a huge fountain and glass elevators that go up to the 5th floor with like paintings on the walls, and it almost looks like a mall, kind of, if I could say that. Not like the experience that you would necessarily want, of course, but hey. So yeah, and also I was a big foodie, so every day they had different specialties on their world menu that they had at Sick Kids. So yeah, there would be like international specials, and they would always have something delicious like samosas available. And I bought a blue vegan leather journal with an embossed Sick Kids logo on it. Actually, this is it here. You can see all my Sick Kids bracelets that I would keep after every appointment they would give me. So yeah, just to mark the day. And after every appointment that I would have at Sick Kids, I would write a journal entry. Like here, let me see. like, I just would write a journal entry. Just about the experience at the hospital. Like, what did I eat for lunch that day? What were my thoughts about the appointment? Were the doctors nice? Things like that. So that was kind of fun. Not fun, but you know what I mean. But yeah, I used that journal to write a page or two, just so I could put my thoughts into words and help me cope with it. But yeah, so I also Googled about AVMs at the time because it was a scary situation, which I do not recommend doing, by the way, because you'll get YIMBD results that do not result in good outcomes. So that was kind of scary. But I kept on coming across this term called taking time bomb exploding, which was kind of scary because that sounds scary in general. But yeah, it was honestly really scary and intimidating for a 15-year-old to have to deal with that specifically. Welcome back to DC Unseen. I'm your host, Katie Gerard, and and so I was talking previously about how it looked like a hospital, or how the hospital looked like almost kind of resembled like an amusement park. But they're actually building a new sick kids hospital right now, which is very much dedicated towards the patient experience, to try to help the patients deal with whatever they're dealing with in a much more safe environment, which is nice. Which is sad, though, because I'm now 19, so I'm out of sick kids' care, sadly. But good for the people below me, I guess. But yeah, it was determined that the AVM was in too critical of an area of my brain to remove through the traditional surgery way. So instead of that, the neurosurgeons at Sick Kids were worried that I could become paralyzed because of the spot that it was in. It was too critical. So in case the surgeons were doing their surgery and they nicked something and it could cause me to have a paralysis, like a long-term paralysis in my limbs. So we decided to go with this other type of surgery, which was called gamma ray surgery, which actually uses chemo, but not the typical chemo way, like how cancer patients receive chemo. It's a certain type of chemo that's only once. So it's not as detrimental because it's only one dose, and it's not you won't like lose a lot of your abilities from it, which other cancer patients do lose. But yeah, so the gamma knife radiation surgery was an option that we were going to go with. But it was kind of funny because my dad made a joke that I would become the Incredible Hulk because gamma knife or gamma rays, Hulk is Hulk because of gamma rays, and I would be receiving gamma ray radiation. So it was kind of like an ongoing joke in my family that I would become the Hulk because of the gamma rays that I would be receiving, which kind of was funny. And way to put some light into the whole hospital situation, I guess. But yeah, so I underwent gamma knife surgery at the wonderful the Sick Kids Hospital. But it was actually done at Toronto Western Hospital, because the gamma ray radiation machines, there's only a select few of them, and Sick Kids wasn't one of them, and so we had to go to Toronto Western Hospital. But it was kind of interesting because I had to take an ambulance that would take me from Toronto Western Hospital, which was where the procedure was being done. That would take me then to the Sick Kids Hospital to get the recovery process done. So that was interesting. But yeah, so when I went back, it was very interesting because they had a lot of help, like therapies. So they had music therapy, art therapy, and they even had like clowns there that would come to you in your hospital room. Yeah. So it was very comforting in that sense. And I would no longer, my hope was that the AVM would shrink and disappear over the next year or so, and I wouldn't have to worry about any medical worries that were brought on to me beforehand. And I really appreciated the nurses who were so nice, and the child life activities that took my mind off of the procedure as well, like crafts and baking. And a few weeks later, I returned to school, hopeful that everything would be back to normal and I could go on with my life as a typical 15-year-old kid. But a few weeks after the surgery, I remember a huge chunk of hair from the radiation I lost a chunk of hair on my head. So it wasn't that big of a deal, considering that there's loads of people who lose their whole head of hair. So I do appreciate that. But it was a little off-guarding for a 15-year-old kid to go through that again. But yeah, so that brought on a whole other set of worries and worries. So well, that was part 1 of my unseen story, and I'll have to continue with another episode when I will tell you about what happened after my grade 11 year, because that was quite scary. Thanks for tuning in today, and as Monty Python's Eric Idle famously sang, always look on the bright side of life.